But does it look like everybody else is on?
Yes, all the other speakers are on.
Perfect. All right. So then we'll get started. So hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Ana Sofia. I am the communications coordinator with Patagonia Area Resource Alliance, and I'm helping out today as the Zoom guru. We have several lovely presenters that are willing to talk to you guys today about the Sonoita Creek Watershed. So we'll get straight to that in a moment. But first, I'd like to point you to the group chat. If you have any questions during the presenters as they're speaking, please drop those questions into the chat box. I'll be able to see those. Let me know who you're asking the question to, which of the presenters you're asking the question to, and then at the end, once everybody's done talking, we'll have about a 10 to 15 minute question and answer session where we'll have those questions answered. I have everybody currently muted, so please, to make sure we don't have any background noise, keep muted. And we will get started. So today, on the agenda today, we have several different awesome nonprofits that have come together to talk about water, and we're going to start off with a welcome from Bob Proctor.
Hello, everyone. To begin, I'd like to do a little history of the Sonoita Creek Watershed. As everyone knows, Native Americans were hunter-gatherers along the creek, and they usually encamped away from the creek for safety reasons. Later on, when the Spanish came, there were approximately a half dozen or more settlements along Sonoita Creek. As you know, the Spanish did some mining and ranching in the area, and they would bring up ox cart trains from Hermosillo with supplies, and they would pick up the gold and other minerals and then take them back to Hermosillo and trade. In the 1820s, the first trappers came through, and it's said that they had to hack their way through the vegetation from Sonoida down to Calabasas to the Santa Cruz River. They said that some of the cottonwood trees were 20 to 38 feet, 30 feet in circumference. So in 1833, the first Mexican land grant was established to San Jose de Sonoida, and that's somewhere, I believe, around the Circle Z Ranch. In the late 1850s, land was cleared for grazing, and the creek was diverted for farming to provide food and feed for the Army and for some of the communities in the area. Supposedly, an 1887 earthquake breached a natural rock ridge dam by the Narrows, which is between Flux Canyon and Circle Z as you drive down 82. And that created some of the water table in the Patagonia area to lower. And then about that time in 1888, the railroad came through. And when they did that, that also changed some of the creek bed. Of course, Sonoita Creek got even by some of the floods washing out some of the bridges on occasion. It's said that there were, in 1857 at the Fort Buchanan, they were, a doctor there said that in his diary, there were beavers in the creek. And then also they had problems with malaria, so they moved the fort away from the creek. And an old-timer had said that Patagonia area where Harshaw met the Sonoita Creek, that they had to drain the swamp and break down the beaver dams. So because there was so much of malaria around, and then they also cleared it for farming. I'm a board member of the Friends of Sonoita Creek, and we're a family of volunteers. We contribute hundreds of hours every year to a community of organizations, some of which are presented today. This community works together to restore and preserve the Sonoita Creek watershed. We reach out to educate our children, visitors, hikers, bikers, birders, campers, and miners about how precious and fragile biodiversity of our region is. As the demand for and the value for water increases, so should our responsibility to properly manage this limited resource. I'm honored today to present to you our host for this event, the Town of Patagonia Flood and Flow Committee Chairperson, Carolyn Schaefer.
Thank you, Bob, very much. Fascinating history. I have always appreciated the documentation that this area has been inhabited for more than 10,000 years. And for me, it attests to the reality of how very special is this ecosystem known as the Patagonia Mountains and the Sonoita Creek Watershed is for today's inhabitants of this area. The Sonoita Creek Flood and Flow Study Committee started in October 2015 when a group of local people representing various organizations working in the Sonoita Creek watershed and some concerned citizens met to discuss the formation of a group to pay attention to what is happening in our watershed and to work for its protection. The group includes representatives from Borderlands Restoration, the Nature Conservancy, Tucson Audubon, Friends of Sonoita Creek, Deep Dirt Farm, and Patagonia Area Resource Alliance. And many of those organizations have representatives on the call today to speak to you about this watershed. The Sonoita Creek watershed is a vital component of this region's well-being, and everyone within that group expressed a commitment to advocate for the health of this watershed. A few months after that, the Patagonia Town Council formally approved the group as an official town committee. The mission of the committee is to facilitate and support efforts by individuals, agencies, and organizations to maintain and improve the health and sustainability of the Sonoita Creek watershed for the benefit of the people and ecosystems that depend upon it. One aspect of the committee's mission includes making recommendations to the Patagonia Town Council with respect to best practices within its jurisdiction to manage erosion, to enhance water flow, to create optimal flood mitigation, and to promote the long-term health of the riparian corridor. Additional aspects of its missions are to look at the entire watershed area, to influence upstream conditions, and to minimize negative downstream consequences, and also to inform and educate the public. The committee is currently working on several projects, including a watershed restoration action plan for several of the sub-watersheds located within the municipal watershed defined by the Forest Service. And the committee is also working with the Forest Service to clarify the boundaries of the town's municipal watershed so that the committee can encourage the Forest Service's mandated responsibility to assure protection of water supplies. The committee continues to monitor proposed industrialized mining activity in the Patagonia Mountains, including requesting all water reports from the mining companies active in the area. The committee meets monthly at 10 a.m. on the second Thursday of every month. Used to be in the Patagonia Town Council chambers, now we Zoom. And we discuss activities in the entire watershed and status of the various projects that are in process, and representatives of any and all entities working in or interested in the watershed, as well as the general public, are invited to participate. And I certainly encourage all of you to join in those meetings if you are interested in what is going on in this watershed. And I will mention on each slide as each speaker is speaking, there is also a website where you can get additional information from any of the organizations, or best of all of the organizations. And on that note, I will pass the torch to Ron Pulliam from Borderlands for his update, please, and thank you, Ron.
Thank you, Carolyn. I'm pleased to join the group, and thank you for your leadership bringing this group together and providing information for the community. Borderlands Restoration Network is a group of 5 organizations that work very closely together, and most of our work is in southern Arizona and in northern Mexico. Today, I will focus just on what we're doing in the watershed, in the Sonoita Creek Watershed, though we have projects scattered around quite a few places. In the Sonoita Creek Watershed, currently we have a number of things going on. I'll sort of divide them into 3 or 4 categories, starting with projects that we're doing that deal with land restoration and habitat restoration for particular wildlife groups. We have had an active program over the last couple of years, supported by the Sonoran joint Sonoran effort, and Quail Forever, that focuses on habitat restoration for quail in the wildlife corridor. We also work with Bats Conservation International on programs that are focused on increasing the nectar supply for 2 endangered species of bats in the area. We have a program focused on emery oak restoration, effort to restore 250 acres of emery oak, with the idea that many wildlife species need vegetated corridors that they can move along, particularly across areas like the expanses of the northern end of Sonoita Creek that don't have trees in them. We have an active Sacaton restoration program. And in addition to these targeted programs that are focused on improving habitat in particular species, we're working with a number of groups that similar to ours that are in this area and some that are not. We have, we're active participants in the National Phenology Network, for example, that provides data on the nectar resources available for bats and hundreds of other species. We have a grant from the Arizona Fire and Forestry Department to do exotic plant removal work. Most of that is focused at the wildlife corridor. We have grants from Forest Service and National Park Service to grow plants for those agencies and for other conservation groups and other wildlife programs. We have an active program with Forest Service in terms of providing plant material for the restoration of Mansfield Canyon that some of you are aware of. We participate in the Water is Life program, and we have a project with Arizona Department of Water Resources that focuses on erosion control and restoration at the T4 ranch. So some of you may be familiar with. In addition to the plants that we grow and sell to agencies and to other conservation groups, we have recently opened a commercial nursery where people can come and buy things. Unfortunately, that was not the best timing with the COVID virus, but you'll be hearing more about that as we move forward. Unfortunately, the COVID virus has hit us hard, and even though a lot of our programs, and particularly the restoration work, is thriving, we've not been able to offer the high school program, Bessie, this summer, or the field school that we normally have, and that's been a big blow because those are kind of, in many ways, the highlights of our year in terms of reaching out to the next generation and training people. We do have a number of interns working with us, and that's been very fruitful and helpful, even though we're not able to have the classes that we normally would have. We're also working on a number of things that providing opportunities for people for wildlife viewing, trails. We've worked with the Dirtbags and other groups on building trails. The Arizona Trail is coming through the northern end of our wildlife corridors property, and that work will be underway this summer. In association with the trails, we are doing a major upgrade of the entrance, southern entrance to the property, to the wildlife corridor, Borderlands Restoration Preserve, which is part of the wildlife corridor. We're doing a major upgrade on the kiosk that's there. We're adding a number of new trail signs on the Smith Canyon Loop Trail that some of you have helped to build. We continue to have the wildlife cameras in Smith Canyon and elsewhere, and we are gearing up to put a kiosk in a parking area on the very northern end of the property, so there's access to the Arizona Trail. A lot of you know that we have received some funding in the last, it's been announced in the last year. We haven't actually received the funds yet from the Forest Legacy Program that is allowing us to expand the wildlife protected area. The terminology is a little confusing. The Sonoita Creek Wildlife Corridor is the name we use for the large area, which was a corridor identified by Arizona Game and Fish Department. Obviously, we didn't create the corridor is there and we're trying to protect it. But as part of the corridor, we have already protected over 800 acres in what used to be the Three Canyons subdivision. We have sold some lots at the southern end of the subdivision, and we have extinguished the development rights on 140 lots in the wild. The new ranch, and we have 76 acres that are being donated under a conservation easement by a local family. And we've been able to buy 72 acres in the Sonora Springs across the highway, where we hope to have a continuous corridor that goes from Forest Service land mesquite, uses of mesquite and other topics. And we're very happy to be a part of this community and to participate to the very amazing conservation and restoration work that's being done in the Sonoita Creek Watershed. So thank you for allowing me to talk a little bit about Borderlands.
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
Ron.
Ron.
Let's see, next up is Marty Lawrence with the Nature Conservancy.
Hi, this is Marty Lawrence. I am the faceless manager of Patagonia Sonoita Creek. And I guess I can start with a little bit of background from, if you're not entirely familiar with it. It began in the mid-1950s when a group in New York saw some precious land that they did not want to see developed, and they put together a 501c3 and purchased the property to protect it. That was pretty much the ethos of the Nature Conservancy going forward. It caught on quickly, and Arizona formed a chapter in mid-1960s, and Patagonia Sonoita Creek Preserve was their first major purchase in Arizona, and they created this preserve at that time. And periodically over time, that worked well, but until we started getting toward the turn of the century, and because things were changing at such a rapid pace, we realized that it's not feasible to expect to purchase property around the country for protection when all of our issues are so much wider ranging. So around 1999, our strategy shifted to something termed to be conservation by design, which looked at much larger landscapes and regional ecosystems and looking at ways to best protect them. And then that also evolved into the notion that we can't do it alone. We have to start incorporating people and realizing that it protects both nature and people to the benefit of both. Now periodically, all of our preserves do what used to be referred to as a site management plan. And the site management plans were primarily produced in-house, and they were focused primarily just on our holdings and those that are immediately affected by any of our activities. But in conjunction with that, our last site management plan for this preserve was produced in 1999. And as you're all aware, not a single thing has changed in the last 20 years for any of us. So we decided it was time for an update. But in keeping with our new realization that we've got to work with a lot more people, we decided we were including other local voices in putting our planning together for the foreseeable future. And what was produced was a Sonoita Creek Watershed Plan, which is intended to encompass the entire watershed, at least as far as south as the lake, which is where our primary area of focus is. There's a totally different set of conditions and restraints that would prevent us from being very effective any further south than that. In any case, the Sonoita Creek Watershed Plan is available from any of the flood and flow member committees. We can forward it to you if you haven't already had a look at it. And I would say that the document pretty well speaks for itself. There's not a great deal I can add, but the overall gist of it is getting people to work together and getting different input from different directions to see how best to preserve this exceptionally special place in this corner of Arizona, and make it work for everybody, including the community and all of the surrounding area, all of the landowners, everybody has a stake in it, because it's all, if we all lose water, we lose all of this. So I'll keep it relatively short and kind of leave it at that, and I'll be happy to answer questions toward the end.
All right, thank you, Marty, much appreciated. Next up, we have Jonathan Horst from Tucson Audubon.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jonathan Horst with Tucson Audubon. I'm the Director of Conservation and Research here. Tucson Audubon has had a special interest in the Sonoita Creek watershed for over 50 years due to the amazing habitat that still exists along the creek. It may be the best Fremont cottonwood, willow, hackberry community that remains anywhere. The birds along the creek are phenomenal and draw people from a worldwide audience. Our engagement with the watershed specifically started with TNC's purchase of the Patagonia Sonoita Creek Preserve. We helped get them to the table there. We popularized and helped protect the Patagonia roadside rest birding point along Highway 82. And we have designated 3 important bird areas right in the watershed. There's the Sonoita Creek important bird area, the Santa Rita Mountains, and Patagonia Mountains, important bird areas. So our interest has been already and will be long-term into the future. Most notably in recent history and on the forefront of most people's minds, in 2014, we acquired the Patton Center for Hummingbirds, which is an internationally known backyard birding hotspot, most famous for being the most reliable place to find violet-crowned hummingbirds, but there are a number of other birds that draw people from far and wide. Since taking on management of the Patton Center, we've significantly increased our ecosystem and habitat restoration efforts in the watershed, which has, I have to say, been an absolutely joint effort between our staff and a whole host of local and regional volunteers and local partners. We certainly couldn't have done anything without everyone else being involved. Beginning with funding from the Partners for Fish and Wildlife program, we started tackling the 5 acres of creekside that are bordering the Patton Center on the east and to the north. And when we began working on it, it was a near monoculture of well-established, very old, very happy Johnson grass. Not a fun task to tackle, but we've since redubbed that area the Cuckoo Corridor and have brought in some private funding and are continuing to seek additional funding to continue the restoration work there. But we have significantly reduced the amount of Johnson grass within that 5-acre parcel. There's just been a multi-pronged approach for controlling the Johnson grass. In the process, we also discovered some interesting things like bank stabilization that was done with box freezers and refrigerators that needed to get swapped out and replaced with more biologically friendly and appropriate bank stabilization measures. We've taken a generally across the board innovative approach to a lot of the work that's done. Saccatone grass would probably have been the primary grass along the floodplain of the Sonoita Creek in the Cuckoo Corridor. And historically, people only have really actively transplanted Saccatone either as it's coming out of dormancy or during its most active growth phases during the summer. And that's fine and dandy, but half the time the creek's flooding and you can't get across, and it's hot and nobody really wants to be doing a lot of work then. And so we started out with just a small pilot project transplanting dormant season Saccatone grasses in the winter, and kept some good records. And it turns out, hey, you can transplant Saccatone just as effectively as small, non-destructive splits from other plants during the cold season when the plants are not growing, when your volunteers and staff are happy to not be overheating. And we doubled the effective window for when Saccatone can be effectively transplanted. Jumping on to additional things that we've been working on in the watershed, a year and a half or 2 years ago now, we brought on somebody, Howard Buchanan, as our Sonoita Creek Watershed specialist. And he's been our prime networker, making sure that we are not overlooking any of the other efforts other people are working on and helping us be a better partner and collaborator. He was instrumental in helping us in TNC's watershed management plan process and working with all the other partners in the region. One of his main goals is helping us get, as a big partnership approach, secure funding from the Bureau of Reclamation through their Community Watershed Management Partnership Program. Still working on that one. Many of the people in the room know about it and are helping us work on this application. One of the aspects to the watershed that most of you might not know is that we recently launched our second invasive plant strike team. We've organizationally been doing invasive species control, invasive plant control for a number of years, especially on properties that we own or manage. But we just recently got licensure to work for other people. And we're looking forward to being able to help everybody else that has invasive species control needs as part of their project proposals, or the necessary first step to being able to do good work on the land and get the right species in place. It's just been a long-term handicap for everybody to, who can we bring in to do this work? So now we're able to help fill that role for people. Yeah, we're very glad to be able to be working hand in hand with everybody in the region, and there will be many more and exciting new projects into the future. And with that, I think that's everything I really wanted to cover.
Awesome. Thank you, Jonathan. Next up, we have Sandy Barr from the Sierra Club Grand Canyon chapter.
Great. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
All right. Excellent. Thanks so much for inviting me to participate today. And as Anna said, I am with the Sierra Club's Grand Canyon chapter. I'm the chapter director for Sierra Club based in Phoenix, and I am on the occupied lands of the Acoma, Autumn, and Peepash. So I am going to talk a little bit today about waters of the United States and waters of the state, and basically the fact that there is a huge gap in protection of surface water in Arizona, and currently a process for filling that gap. I'm not sure how familiar everyone is with what happened with the Waters of the U.S. Rule, but on June 22nd, a rule was finalized relating to what's covered under the Clean Water Act, what waters the Clean Water Act applies to. And this Waters of the U.S. rule basically leaves a lot of uncertainty for Arizona waters, but most certainly also leaves out a lot of our waters. And the reason for that is most ephemeral waters are not covered by this Waters of the U.S. rule. So that is of significant concern to many entities throughout Arizona, because we know how precious our water is and how important it is to protect the water quality, how important it is to protect these ephemeral washes that feed our perennial waters, but also help to recharge groundwater, and a whole lot of other things as well. We also know they're very important for wildlife. So there's a lot of concern about this. The Department of Environmental Quality did not go to the legislature this last session for any legislation to address this gap in coverage that is occurring. I think perhaps they thought that there would be a stay on the rule. I don't know, but anyway, there is a gap, and they have now started a process for developing a state program to fill in the gap. They established a stakeholder advisory group that is not a public entity, is not meeting in public. Their meetings, you can't just listen in, which is unfortunate. The slides from the meetings are available, But the stakeholder advisory group was established to come up with a framework for Waters of the State program. And we and a number of other entities, about 17 to 20 organizations, have been involved in monitoring what's going on, and then asking the Department of Environmental Quality questions, which have not been answered, as well as sending the Department of Environmental Quality a letter outlining what we think is needed in Waters of the State program to properly protect our critical surface waters. We submitted that letter to the Department of Environmental Quality a couple weeks ago and have not heard anything back from them on it yet. But just to give a quick overview of it, it basically says you need a program that protects the ephemeral waters. That's really critical, that it can't be a narrow program. And that also the agency needs to think about a lot of the things that are lost when there isn't Clean Water Act coverage. Many times we just think, oh, okay, well, the Clean Water Act doesn't cover that. So yeah, let's just deal with the water quality over here. But there are a lot of issues that come into play with the Clean Water Act, including the National Environmental Policy Act, which requires a look at alternatives and evaluating the impacts of projects, Endangered Species Act consultation, relating to some permitting. There's a public interest review, which we think is very important. And then another provision that is lost is when the government doesn't take action under the Clean Water Act, others can step in and use the citizen suit provisions to push for action by recalcitrant or foot dragging government entity. And unfortunately, we don't really have those provisions in Arizona law. There's something there, but it's very, very weak. So we presented that. We're hoping that the Department of Environmental Quality will look at some of those provisions, but we're also looking to see if we can make some headway in the Arizona legislature with a stronger program. Just to let you know a little bit about DEQ's timeline, they are looking at developing framework for legislation and getting legislation introduced in the 2021 session. Then from that, they would develop the implementing rule and would have a final program in 2023. So we basically have a 3-year gap, unfortunately, and unless there is some success in the courts with overturning this rule, or there's something, the Congress steps in or something like that, we will have a significant gap. The other thing I wanted to mention is the Department of Environmental Quality has put out a screening tool for people who would normally get permits, a Clean Water Act permits, and for them to help determine whether or not they need a permit. They're just vetting that right now. And I think that, again, there's a lot of uncertainty with that. I listened in yesterday on a presentation, and it sounds like for about 80% of the waters, they really don't have a good idea what the flow regime is. So there's not great understanding whether or not the Clean Water Act would apply. So I think that is just a quick snippet of what's going on, irrespective of where you are at on the Waters of the US rule. I think we all would agree that our surface waters are really important. We have, very few that flow year round. We have we have to protect these waters for us, for our communities, and certainly for the other creatures we share this state with. And so I hope folks will, if pay attention and weigh in and advocate for programs that ensure that we are protecting these waters into the future. So I think I'll stop there. And again, thank you very much.
Thank you, Sandy. All right, last but not least on our agenda, we have Carolyn Schaefer with Patagonia Area Resource Alliance.
Thank you, Anna. Patagonia Area Resource Alliance, also known as PARA, was founded in 2011 with a mission to monitor the activities of mining companies in order to ensure the actions of the companies, local government, and local government agencies have sustainable, long-term benefits for our public lands, our water, our wildlife, and the ecosystem in which we all live. There is a 100-year history of mining activity in the Patagonia Mountains, with that historical period ending in about the early 1960s. The watershed has more than 100 historical mines that continue to leak what is known as acid mine drainage. The picture on the screen is of the Lead Queen mine, which the Forest Service has now remediated, worked on it several times, with the most recent work being completed in 2019. The health of the Patagonia Mountains and the Sonoita Creek Watershed are currently under major threat by 21st century industrialized mining companies, which have filed mining claims on more than 39,000 acres in the Patagonia Mountains. South 32, an Australian mining company, has a total of almost 27,000 acres of active claims in the Patagonia Mountains. South 32 is what is known as a senior mining company, which actually mines projects. Barksdale Resources, a Canadian mining company, has a total of about 12,000 acres of active claims in the Patagonia Mountains. Barksdale is a junior mining company, which develops projects to sell to a senior mining company. During the 100-year historical period of mining in these mountains, a total of 250,000 tons of ore was removed. 100 years, 250,000 tons. One modern mining company proposal is to remove that 100-year total every 25 days. 21st century industrialized mining is dramatically different from the historical mining days. PARA has been true to its mission with successes such as stopping Wildcat Silver's open pit mine for the Hardshell project and stopped exploratory drilling on the Sunnyside project. Junior Canadian mining company Wildcat Silver renamed itself Arizona Mining and revised its business plan with the purchase of the historical Trench Mine and successfully marketed the project to South 32. In August of 2018, the mining threats to the Patagonia Mountains moved to a different level when South 32 completed the purchase of the Hermosa project. From August 2018 through December 2019, South 32 was focused on its legal obligation to complete the remediation of the former trench mine tailings, and it also conducted exploratory drilling on its patented lands. There were minimal action steps for PARA during that time. That changed dramatically in 2020. The major concern at this time is South 32's massive dewatering plans, which it presented to elected officials in July of this year. Its target minerals are at 1,500 feet and water is at 100 feet. So it proposes a 4-year dewatering program, which will draw down a minimum of 1.6 billion, with a B, 1.6 billion gallons of water per year for 4 years. Most of that water will be released into the Harshaw Creek with a forecast rise of 20 feet in some areas and water depletion in other areas. There is a concern that this will completely reconfigure the water of the mountains. And as Sandy pointed out, the state of Arizona having a gap period to protect the surface waterways is of major concern. The November elections are important. Please vote for elected officials who will value the health of our planet's ecosystem more than corporate profits. PAR's actions through the remainder of 2020 will position us either to continue working to protect the ecosystem under declining environmental protections, or to continue working to protect the ecosystem under improved laws and the possibility of fulfilling PAR's vision. That vision includes the Coronado Forest throughout the Patagonia Mountains, and all of the Sky Island regions are protected from 21st century industrialized mining. The 1872 mining law is rewritten. Arizona state laws eliminate all mining company exemptions. Restoration of our local lands and watershed commences, and the community proactively chooses to be naturalized to place, which is defined by scientist Robin Wall Kimmerer as, and I quote, "Being naturalized to place means to live as if this is the land that feeds you, as if these are the streams from which you drink, that build your body and fill your spirit. To become naturalized is to know that your ancestors lie in this ground. Here you will give your gifts and meet your responsibilities. To become naturalized is to live as if your children's future matters, to take care of the land as if our lives and the lives of all our relatives depend upon it, because they do." End quote. I close with this statement. We humans are at a choice point in the evolution of this planetary ecosystem. May we choose wisely for the benefit of all life forms. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. So all of our presenters have spoken. We have a couple of minutes for questions. I see that there are already 2 in the chat box, so I'll ask these, and if anybody has any remaining questions, feel free to pop those in. The first question is for Ron from Trisha. She says, Ron referred to a grant from ADWR that sounded like it was about erosion and water quality, which I would normally think would be ADEQ. Was it indeed an ADWR grant or something else? Ron, can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, this is Ron. We have funding from both. I can't tell you exactly what the grant titles are on both, but I believe the ADWR grant is for work at T4 Ranch. So I don't know if anyone else from Borderlands is on that I can correct that or not, but I think that's the case.
Okay, thank you. And then we have a question for Sandy, also from Trisha, saying, do we think the mining companies will try to avoid needing to have a pollution permit for the ephemeral washes? Could they likely succeed under either state or federal revised regulations?
Well, I have to say, I don't know for sure, but I think it is likely that various entities, including some mining interests, will use the screening tool that is available from the Department of Environmental Quality and find that they do not need permits, and yes, avoid permitting. I think also of concern is, you know, there's the dredge and fill permits, the 404 permits, which are also of concern. And then the other thing I would mention is the Arizona outstanding waters, some of which are potentially affected by proposed mines. It's unclear what will happen with those, because though the establishment of outstanding Arizona waters is done pursuant to the Clean Water Act. So what happens if we don't have that?
Okay. We also have another question for you, Sandy. H asks, does the Sierra Club have capacity to support a water Sentinels program on Sonoita Creek?
Possibly. That would be a great conversation to have. Right now, our water sentinels are not going out because of COVID, because Sierra Club is told us we all have to stay home. But I'd love to talk to someone about that, because I think that there's some good potential there. So yeah, whoever asked, I'm not looking at the chat right now, but you know, send me an email and let's talk with Jennifer Martin, our Water Sentinels program manager, and see if there's something we might do there.
Awesome. Sandy, do you mind throwing your email into the chat box?
I'll do that right now.
Great.
Oh, can I say one other thing? I mentioned that letter to DEQ earlier, and I just wanted to let folks know that that is available. We'll share that with folks if anybody wants to see it. So
great.
Thanks.
Ronald asks, do any of the groups measure the groundwater levels in the Patagonia Creek over time? Do any of our speakers today know that answer?
This is Bob. I would say that most of the studies that were done are older, and at this point there is no monitoring essentially being done. The U.S. Forest Service has designated the town of Patagonia as a municipal watershed, and at the last Flood and Flow Committee meeting they did state that they were going to put some monitoring equipment on the Harshaw Creek, and most of that is flow, and there's some weather stations, and maybe they talked about monitoring a couple of wells, and there's a possibility that some private owners may be able to allow the Forest Service to put in monitoring equipment in some of their wells in the area. So there is no real basis of studies that have been done recently, and most of it is outdated.
Thank you.
This is Andy Gould, and I know that in past years, and I don't know up to what point, there was a group called PAWS, Patagonia Area Water Study or Water Survey, I'm not sure what the S was, that actually got some training from ADEQ and a loan of some equipment, and they were doing some groundwater as well as surface water monitoring. I don't know whatever happened to the data they gathered and what might be done to resume that now.
I have two questions for Carolyn. First one, you spoke about the upcoming election. What do we need to know about local candidates and the South 32 mine, and how can we get involved?
Thank you, Shelley, for asking that question. PARA is in the process right now, having sent out candidate questions to all the candidates, and when we receive their responses, we will share that on PARA's website and in a newsletter also. I will put our website in the chat box again, so you can go to the website and look at the action steps that everybody can take to speak out to legislators, and also to sign up for the newsletter. So you can do that. Of course, as a nonprofit, we cannot support one candidate over another candidate, but we can and do ask all the candidates relevant questions and then share their responses so that you can make informed decisions about that. Did I fully answer that, Anna?
Yeah, speaking from a coordinator of PARA stance myself, we have just put together a way for people to take action. If you go to patagoniaalliance.org/50 days, there are 10 ways that we have thought up of that you can get involved leading up to the election. So I highly recommend you check that out, and I'll throw that in the chat box in a minute. The other question for you, Carolyn, do you have some water budget impacts of the 1.6 billion gallons of planned dewatering?
We do not at this point in time. The mining company less than 3 weeks ago filed their major amendment to their aquifer protection permit at the state level. We are reviewing that now, and with that information, hopefully we will be able to share a lot more information about the outcome of the plans. So not at this time, but expect more information in the future.
Awesome.
And I want to say while I'm here too, Claire just typed in here, and you may or may not see it, but Patagonia Regional Times is sponsoring a Santa Cruz County Board of Supervisors forum on September 26th. PARA has submitted questions for that process also. The other key thing that is happening right now is a proposed new transmission line. PARA is also submitting questions to the Arizona Corporation Commission candidates because they would be the ones who would have a heavy influence on that. So again, I will put in the chat box how to connect on the website so you can sign up for the newsletter.
Awesome. Thank you, Carolyn. I'm not seeing any other questions. If I've missed your question, please let me know, but I would recommend people take a look through the chat. Larry Fisher popped a note in there about the State of Cienega Watershed 2020 and some upcoming events on that. And then I'll also mention, somebody asked if we are recording this. We did record this event today, and we will be putting it up online in the coming days.
And on that note, with no additional questions in there, I'll put on my chairperson of the Flood and Flow Committee official hat and say deep gratitudes for everybody who is here today, for caring about the water. Given the chaos of the times, there is no other place nor any other group of people I want to be with as we transition through these multiple crises. We have every skill set needed to co-create the better world. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you,
And we will
everybody.
share the recording.